From day one, we are told who we should be, how to live, and what's acceptable. Before we even have a chance to discover ourselves, our society has already drawn those lines for us. But what happens when those lines are keeping us from knowing and embracing who we truly are? Welcome to Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox, a podcast about unpacking and unlearning everything that's kept you from living as your true self. Through honest conversations about your internal emotional landscape, sexuality, coming out later in life, relationships, and the journey to self-acceptance, we break free from the boxes we never chose. Hello, and welcome to Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox. This week, I've heard such a host of interesting comments from women that are either in my program or they're in the BiLife community or they're working with me in one-on-one coaching, and they all have a similar tone and ring to them. I wanted to bring them forward and invite you all to think about these ways of thinking, maybe things that you're saying to yourself, and maybe feelings that you're having. These women, and so many women in the world, are taught that there is a right way to do things. There's a right way and there's a wrong way. And many of the women that land in my programs or land in working with me have worked really hard to do things the right way. They have married when they were younger, they had kids, and they have tried to stay in relationships that were unsatisfying to them for many, many reasons that were outside of their sexuality. They have stayed because of expectations that they felt were placed upon them when they took that vow in getting married, that they would be together forever. This would be their one person they'd be with together forever with. And even though they struggled enormously in the relationship and, in some cases even fell out of love with the person they were married to, they still felt there was an obligation on their behalf to uphold the right thing, the rules that they were taught to follow. They felt like that hard work was theirs to carry, and that was going to be what gave them value in the world. Now, they did not pull this out of thin air. They did not make this up. This is literally what is taught. It is in the air we breathe, that this is what a woman is. A woman is selfless. We don't have our own needs. If we do, we ignore them, we stuff them, we push them down, because what society needs and expects of us, or what our religion needs and expects of us, is of much higher value than of what we need for ourselves. In fact, if we do need things for ourselves, we are selfish women. So this is what's taught. This is what people breathe in, and this is how they carry on in their lives. And I can tell you, it breeds a lot of anger and a lot of resentment, and also a lot of feelings of guilt and shame about the feelings that come up when, in fact, that life, which may look really beautiful on the outside, is extremely unsatisfying and unfulfilling on the inside, but there feels like there's really no way out. I know some of you here are already out. You might have lost your partner. You might have separated or divorced from your partner, and maybe you've never even partnered at all, right? One of the things I heard this week from a client was, I am owed something for following the rules, doing all the hard work, and doing it all right. I spent over 50 years of my life doing that. I followed all the rules, I did all the hard work, and I did everything right. Now I am separated, I am divorced, and I know that I'm gay, and I feel like, I'm going to say some entity, right? Whether it's God or the universe or just, in some way, something owes me because of what I have given. This client asked me if I could relate to that feeling, and I said I could not. because I don't feel like I followed all the rules or I did everything right. I did everything the way that was right for me, which would land me probably in the bucket of a selfish woman. And I'm okay with that because I prioritized taking care of myself over taking care of everybody else in the world and what everybody else expects of me. We were starting to explore. I said to this client of mine, write out for me all of the things that you did right, all of the rules that you followed. I want to see all of them. I want to see what is creating this feeling in you that you are now owed something because of what you have done. And when I said that to her, she started to well up and she said, oh, I can feel it coming. I feel the sadness. Just the idea of having to put all of that down on a piece of paper feels so hard and so sad. And it's bringing up all of these feelings. So I just want to throw that out there to any of you that feel like you are owed something for all of the hard work you have done. You have followed the rules. You have done what society expected of you. And now it is your payback time. Does that resonate with you? If it does, I suggest write out all of the things that you have done right. Let yourself feel what it feels like to see what you have done, where those things were really natural and organic and came from who you are just as a person, because certainly some of them will, and where you became selfless and sacrificed yourself for the well-being of everybody else around you. I have a feeling that the desire to have a payback, to be met in some way by some entity that gives you something back for all that you have done to follow the rules, to do things right, is in essence some way your system is trying to keep you away from feeling your feelings. If you had to sit and list out all of those ways that you've done things right and all of the ways you've shown up in the world as selfless so that you could be worthy as a woman, the feelings of anger and rage and sadness and grief and maybe even fear about what the remainder of your time here, this one time through, will look like, would need to surface. But if in fact this entity came and gave you this thing that you were going to get as your payback for everything you've done right, you would never have to face any of those feelings because you would just say, I did it all right, and this is what I'm getting in return for it, right? So the mind has a way of coming up with this magical thinking that, I've done it all right. I followed all the rules. I'm going to get a payback. And then once you have that payback, which in this fantastical creation of your mind probably looks like some perfect relationship that's sublime in all the ways, and you never have to feel anything difficult again because you got your payback. What a wonderful, amazing, creative way for our internal systems to try to save us from feeling painful feelings, right? This imagining of this amazing thing that's going to happen at the end of it all because you've done it all right. Does that sound familiar? Maybe it sounds like something you've learned through your religion, that if you follow all the rules and you do it all right, you're going to be rewarded with a visit in heaven. And I'm not sure what happens when you're in heaven because I didn't grow up with that, but I think it's something really fantastical. So when we come back down to earthly reality of being a human, we're born with core emotions. Our emotions are there for us to feel through and to process. Yes, it's painful at times, and it's also really joyful at times, right? We're meant to feel all the emotions equally. So don't let your resentment and grief stop you from feeling through all of your emotions so you can live with 2 feet grounded on this earth for every day that you have lucky enough to be alive and to be here and to be connecting to who you actually are authentically. I had another conversation with a client that grew up also in the church and grew up in a single parent home. And this client said that she feels guilty. She feels guilty about exploring her sexuality. She feels guilty that she might end up needing to leave the marriage and that her children might end up living in two homes. She feels guilty that she did not live up to, or maybe can't live up to, the oath she took to marry the person she ended up marrying. And she feels like she has no choice other than to continue to be intimate with her husband because he doesn't want to be with anybody else. She offered him to go outside the marriage. He doesn't want to be with anybody else. And she feels that if he's not going to be with anybody else, it is her responsibility as the person that married him to be sexually intimate with him. Now, a much younger version of me could relate to this. A much younger version of me actually felt this too. And I spent about 45 minutes in a therapy session back when I was 32 arguing with my therapist about it, that it was my duty as a wife. Having sex with your husband is your duty. And today, this client repeated this back to me, and it reminded me of how strong these tenets of what marriage means for a woman, how strong these are, and how they bypass what you actually desire and want. That becomes unimportant. I truly believe there is something wrong with this. I don't think anybody should be in a marriage where they are repeatedly betraying themselves. So I ask you, if you are in a marriage, whether you're gay or you're not, are you betraying yourself? Are you feeling like this is your duty? This is what you have to do? And then in my BiLife community, which is truly such an unbelievably supportive and loving space, I feel the love between these women. We were having a conversation, and I shared that while I was married, I always felt like I was going to have another life. I had no idea what that meant or why I thought that. I never really gave it much thought, but it was just something that my brain would tell me. At some point, you're going to have another life. There were times when I was married where I wished that I could just easily find myself to be single. And that included fantasizing and imagining terrible things that would happen to my husband of the time. And then after I would imagine those things, I would feel awful about myself because I don't want bad things to happen to anybody, let alone somebody that I married and I actually deeply cared about. So it was confusing. I did not know what was going on in my head. And in our conversation in the BiLife, I brought this up and shared how I would have these fantasies of something terrible happening where he just didn't exist anymore. And then I was free and I could live my second life, my next life. And one of the women in the community said, "Thank you so much for saying that out loud and admitting that. I also have felt that. And I felt so ashamed of myself, terribly embarrassed that I could think such a thing for somebody that I deeply love and care about." And one by one, women's hands started to go up and they each started saying, "Me too, me too." And before you knew it, all of us had had this thought. And I said, this is not because we are all terrible humans. This is because there is something terribly wrong with the systems of oppression that affect women in our lives, in our countries where we've lived, all over the world. There is something terribly wrong when the only way we can imagine achieving the type of freedom that we need to embody ourselves is to imagine something happening to our partner that they no longer exist. That is not about us being bad people. That is about the expectation that is laid upon us that so many of us take on as not only expectation from the outside, but obligation. I have to show up in these ways. Not I choose to, not I want to, I have to. I don't have a choice. These are the rules. This is how you do it right. I have to show up this way. And the only way we achieve some feeling of freedom and self-dominance and self-energy is to be out of these oppressive prison-like life sentence marriages that may actually be fulfilling in ways, but still because of the expectations that are layered on top of just a human to human connection, make it so unbearable for us. We start fantasizing about how we're going to get out of this thing. And we feel terrible about ourselves and we feel shameful about ourselves. So we turn it on ourselves. We don't even put the blame out into the world where it is meant to be. Put it out into the heteropatriarchy, right? Free yourself from these constructs that were not your creation, but you are living under. And instead, nope, we turn it and we turn it against ourselves. What kind of person? How could I think such a thing? It was a really eye-opening moment. And even for me, because I have shared this news that I have said I'm going to have another life at some point many, many times over the last many years. I have shared that information. I never knew anyone else had a thought like that. Nobody else said, I thought that too. So to see an entire room of people say too, I also felt validated in that. Because it didn't feel good that I thought that. But it was in that moment that everybody started raising their hands where I said, holy shit, my God, this is because of society. This is because of religion. This is because of what is put on us as women in the world. So if you have felt anything like that, I want to give you permission to free yourself from it. You are not a terrible person. You are a healthy person. Because your system is searching for that light that it can move toward and that freedom that you were born to possess. But unfortunately, our society does not allow us to reach for, see, even acknowledge that that is something that is our right. Like we are born to be free. So these are my thoughts for this week. Again, giving yourself so much grace. There is so much work to do to unpack and unlearn these ways of being in the world that we have been taught. It is a lifelong journey of unpacking. I'm here to accompany you along. Should you need help, reach out. I'd be happy to have you as a guest on the show. I'd be happy to have you in the Bi Life community where all sexualities are celebrated equally. And everybody supports one another's journey, however different each and every one of them look. And if you're ready to do the work to unpack, unlearn, and unleash yourself, just drop me an email at Samantha@unboxyoursexuality.com. There is nothing more rewarding as a human for me in this lifetime than watching women who have been deeply mired in all of this societal expectation, rule following, doing things right, free themselves and come into their power. It is so rewarding. I am here should you wish to take that journey. Thank you for spending this time with me on Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more folks find these conversations. If you're ready to unbox from something that's keeping you stuck, I would love to support you. You can find the application to the show at unboxyoursexuality.com. Let's stay connected. Find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Lesbian Curiosity Coach. Give me a follow and join the conversation. Remember, we only have this one time through. Why not unbox yourself and let your true self shine in all its beautiful glory?